Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Accidental Entrepreneur Podcast. It's the third Thursday of February in 2023, and we are, hopefully, live today. So let's get into today's show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work. And they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode.
Okay, everyone, welcome to the first live episode of the show. I had been researching for a while as to how to do this, and I'll tell you a little bit about our new studio later in the show. If you see us, because hopefully this is streaming live, and if it's not, I'm talking to myself for an hour, send us an email or a text. If you see us on Facebook, if you see us on LinkedIn, we're definitely streaming live on YouTube, and if you're a guest in the studio, then you would see it obviously from being in the studio. Okay, so we're changing up our concept. It's been about 4 years with the podcast, so we're going to be doing a few less episodes a month, along with the live episodes. So we'll be pre-recording episodes like we always have. We'll be releasing on the second and fourth Friday of every month, so you'll get those episodes come out about 9 o'clock in the morning. And we'll be going live like we are today on the third Thursday of the month at 10:30 in the morning Eastern Time. And we have guests booked for March, April, May, and June, I believe, at this point, maybe even July. And we'll be booking those guests. We've got some real interesting guests. It should be a lot of fun, live read commercials and everything. So I hope you tune in, because over time we'll build up an audience and we'll have actually people listening to this. It obviously gets repurposed onto the streaming platforms, and on YouTube you can watch it later, but live is fun, so we wanted to do it a little bit that way. So one of the exciting things, or the fun things about a live episode, is we can do some live reads and recognize our sponsors for the show. And we've had some new sponsors joining us as well. So first, our main sponsor is AWeber. They've been on board for a few months. They run our email marketing campaigns. AWeber is a competitor, and in my opinion, a better alternative to MailChimp and Constant Contact. So please check them out. I'll be reading their commercial in the mid-roll of the show. And we also have an affiliate relationship with a production studio called One of One Productions, which is up near the George Washington Bridge, I believe, in Fort Lee. And if you're ever looking to have a show, whether it's a podcast, you want to do a video interview or an audio interview, they have a nice studio up there. You can go there and do it in person right there. They also do editing and stuff if you're recording your own things. And if you want a guest, it's a good way to promote your business or what you do, or a book, or you're speaking, or you're coaching, and you want a guest on podcasts, and there's a lot of directories you can list yourself on to be a guest. You want to have good equipment. You want to have a nice headset. You want to have a good microphone. Some of the podcasts require those kind of equipment. So if you go to our website, my personal website, actually, mitchbeinhacker.com, and I'll talk a little bit about that more later in the show, One of One Studios has put together a guesting kit for us. I think it's $120 or $150, but it includes the microphone, the stand, the headset, everything you need to be a good guest on a show. So you make good, clean audio and video. Actually, that doesn't include a camera, so you'd have to get your own camera if you want a video. But it'll give you clean audio because they want good feed for their show, and you also want to make good content for you to use to attract people to your business. And there'll be some links in the show notes as well when we republish this to all of the sponsors. We also have a new sponsor coming on in March, the Alternative Board Tab, if you've ever heard of them. They're an advisory business. I'm a big advocate of advisory. boards and the use of boards. So it's a bit of a think tank sharing of ideas, and you'll learn more about that in March. But I want to thank John, who runs the alternative board in Central Jersey, for coming on board. You'll learn more about that. One of the great things I mentioned is to do a live read of commercials. So normally, or on the pre-recorded shows, and in the future, there'll be an opening roll mentioning the sponsors, and then we'll do a live read with the guest or whatever. But let me read about our sponsors, and then we'll get more into the show. Today, you only have me as a guest to share some ideas about business planning and things that you should do to be successful, and we'll start with our first guest next month, so it won't be as long of an episode this morning. So Aweber, I mentioned to you, is a email marketing system that allows you to automate and market your business. So if you're looking to market and grow your business, or perhaps you just get started and you want to hit the ground running, Aweber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, Aweber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use their tools to promote the podcast and to market the law firm. Aweber is the best alternative for online marketing. And one of the most important things, and I'll mention this later as well, when it comes to being successful with marketing and growing your business, is to stay in touch with your clients and to build an email list. It's the number one reason why podcasts are successful, and it's the number one reason why people continue to be successful and bring in business. So don't overlook the fact that you're out there networking, you're marketing, you're contacting people, you're doing work for clients. Anybody who's raised their hand and you've met, wants to stay in touch, get them on your email list. Get started with Aweber. They have intro packages, and we have affiliate links in the show notes that you can get started with. But I can't tell you how many times I've met people in marketing, in networking, and they do something, whatever it is they perhaps do, and then months later I need their services and I can't remember who they are because I don't necessarily categorize and catalog everybody that I meet. So as a result of that, if they had kept in touch with me and added me to their mailing list, which I'm always happy to do, they're top of mind for me, and I remember those things. So that's really, really important. I mentioned also one-of-one productions. So if you're looking to get into podcasting, or you want to market your business and it's something that you like to do, not everyone has to start a podcast. I always say, do the marketing things that are comfortable for you and that you enjoy. Podcasting is fun, but it is work also. I got to do editing. I got to make sure it gets out. I got to make sure, we post the social media stuff and promote it and so forth. Even for today, I had to write a script. So it's not for everybody. If you like to blog and write, do that. But if you'd like to just be a guest and you don't want to have your own show, you can do that. But One-of-One Productions, as I mentioned, is a New Jersey-based studio just over the George Washington Bridge. They cater to the booming business of podcasting. They offer a comfortable atmosphere using the latest technology to record your podcast, and they offer a full service. They are a full service media company offering both audio and video production services, creating both audio and video podcasts, as well as video shorts for business and personal use. So I mentioned before, if you record your own podcast, video, audio, you can send them the feed. They'll do the editing for you. Professional audio equipment packages are available through their website for all budgets. And as I mentioned before, if you check out our website, MitchBeinhacker.com, we do have a link to a guesting kit that they've put together just for our listeners. So it's been almost 4 years to the day that I started the podcast, back in February of 2019, I believe. And I've spoken to business owners, influencers throughout the world. And, the goal, everybody asks me why I do this, besides the fact that I enjoy it, and it is my marketing, the main crux of my own marketing, is because as a business lawyer for over 30 years, I have met with and worked with, obviously, hundreds of business owners and hundreds of clients, helping them get started, helping them continue to operate, deal with problems. And a lot of times, and too often, business owners struggle because they don't do the fundamental things that they need to do to be successful, or at least to increase their chances of success, and see the problems coming down the road. And usually when there's a major problem, or they have to shut down, or they have to go in a different direction, it's because they didn't see that problem coming. So the goal of the podcast, and it took a while to formulate, but with the interviews that I do with all of our guests, is to, you know, to share their stories, to share their failures, to share their success, the things they did, the lessons that they learned, and the advice they have. And as our tagline says, to share their stories and help other people get a hold of their business. That's really the goal of the podcast, and it continues to be that. And for me, as a host, I can let the guests make the content, tell their story, and it allows them to market their business, it allows me to market my business, and allows us to share good content and keep bringing that to you. And that's one of the reasons why we're switching to this new studio, to be able to bring higher quality content to people, and obviously with the live stream and all this exciting stuff. But that's why I do it, and why I will continue to do it. Hopefully we'll be getting on, 8-10 years, we'll still be doing this thing. So I told you I wanted to mix it up a little bit, and we switched our studio. So we no longer do this on Zoom. We're now in a virtual studio called Riverside FM. If you are on the, if you're in the audience, you probably see that you're through Riverside is where the live studio is. And we do our pre-records through there as well. But it allows me to, like you probably heard the opening, allows me to add in sounds. It allows me to, something like that, go into commercials and do stuff like that. So I don't have to edit that in. If you watch any of our older videos, they're just raw videos. There's really no editing. The editing all goes on the audio version, not on the video. So I had mentioned that we have guests. I wrote it down. March, April, May, and June, it looks like. And if you know of anybody who's interested in being a live guest, please have them reach out, or they can contact me through Podmatch, or that's probably the best place. Or you can go to the website. MitchBeinecke.com is where the podcast is, and I'll explain that in a minute. So I thought I'd talk to you today about what are the things that makes business owners, the things that I've seen that make them successful from all the interviews I've done and all the hundreds of businesses that I've worked with. Before I do that, let me get a little bit into, I mentioned a personal business site, and some things are going on my world, since it's my podcast. And then we'll get into the advice for you as a business owner. Then we'll probably hit 15, 20 minutes, and we'll wrap it up for today. So it'll be a short episode. So the podcast was kind of getting lost in the law firm, in my opinion. And it's not all, it's not about legal. It's about business. Little bit of an overlap. So I broke it out, and the Beinecke Law site is my legal site, right? So it includes all of the, business owner services, commercial real estate, estates and trust work that I do. You can learn about our services. There's some online services. There's information. We have a blog on there, which has got a few articles, and that is growing. And that blog will include things like we'll put articles out on advanced tax strategies for high net worth individuals, professionals, and business owners. We'll put some things in about things to do to be successful and avoid legal problems over time. But then, so what I did was I broke out the personal side and created MitchBeinecke.com, which allows me to a little bit better highlight. First of all, it allows me to highlight my advisory services, right? So I advise businesses, and I'm always available for a free consult to talk about it, who may be outside of my jurisdiction as a lawyer, but I advise them and guide them and coach them, let's say, although I don't really consider myself a coach, in the outside of the jurisdiction of New Jersey. So I wouldn't be acting as a lawyer. I can't do that. You have your local counsel. I can interact with your local counsel. But I'm there to guide you and help you along the way because, I have 30 years of legal experience and I have 30 years of business experience in that regard. Also, I have several ebooks. I have a new book coming out hopefully in March or April. Talk about that in a minute. And that will be available on the personal site. Any podcast guest hosts that I did, guest shows, interviews, presentations I made that were able to capture because they were on Zoom and they were recorded or going on there. And I'm also available through that site for speaking engagements, either virtual or in person. There may be fees that apply, especially if it's in person, but call me. I'm available to talk at no charge, and you can ask me any of those questions. The book, and the book's going to kind of lead me into what we're going to talk about today. So I am fortunate enough to be authoring a book with a good friend of mine, Barry Cohen, who's a publicist, and he's writing a series of books, 10 Ways to Do Various Things. So I'm going to put up a graphic here. So this is the book, 10 Ways to Get Sued by Anyone and Everyone, the Small Business Owner's Guide to Staying Out of Court. And like I said, we're getting the manuscript back from the publisher, I believe, the end of the month. We've gotten the copyright, and we will hopefully be going to press in March or April as soon as they can get it set up. It'll be available on Amazon. You can order it in paperback. You can order it on Kindle. It's a primer. You know, it's not a story. You're not going to probably read the whole book, but, you know, it's a primer on 10 things, and I think there's 2 bonus chapters in the book, to know as a business owner, things to do, and you can use it as a resource guide to hopefully improve your chances of being successful. So, some of the things that are addressed in the book, some of them aren't. I'm going to talk about them. Let me tell you about 5 things. I'm going to cover 5? Yeah. 5 things that I think increase your chances of success and help you to stay out of trouble, or when trouble shows itself with your business, as it will, problems with partners, problems with customers, that you're better prepared for that. And constantly I see these problems. They're just regular themes that come up. First and foremost, one of the main reasons that people kind of veer off the road to success, or they stay on success because they have this habit, is putting things in writing, right? A business plan, operating agreements, customer contracts, vendor agreements, because we are notorious for having faulty memories, and it's not any of our faults. It's just the way your mind works. In the book, I interview a memory expert. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to put out an excerpt from the book with an article in a blog on that, about memory. And you see countless examples in the media, in other on TV shows, which obviously are dramatizations, but this is what happens in real life, where people just recall things completely different than what the other person recalls. There's been studies of what they call light bulb moments in time, where you were somewhere where the Challenger blew up, or the World Trade Center collapsed, or whatever, and you were sure that you were with somebody, and it turns out later that person wasn't even in town. Because the way our minds work is that our minds kind of mix things together. We're not a filing cabinet. We're a box of stuff, and we got sticky notes in the box, and those sticky notes stick to all kinds of things, and we get confused. It's not, a precursor to dementia. It's just that's the way our mind works, and we are bombarded with information, especially nowadays, right? We're seeing things on our phone and email and the news on TV and streaming services, and it's all getting confused, and it's hard to keep it straight. So it's very easy for someone else, if you don't have things in writing and you did something on a handshake, or you have a bunch of text messages back and forth, for the other person to feel and really believe that you agreed on X and you're sure you agreed on Y. It's probably somewhere in between. But if you don't have it in writing, it becomes a big mess and costly legal battles, and very difficult for a judge to, wade through. Because he doesn't want to create a contract between the two of you. He doesn't want to listen to each of you, and he's going to decide who's telling the truth. And if you don't have it in writing, and maybe you're more of the controlling party because, you kind of made the deal and they kind of working for you, judge may hold that against you. So it's really important that you put, what I call governance documents, operating agreements, bylaws, articles of incorporation in writing, right? So who's doing what in the business, what kind of liability you have, who can, obligate the business. What happens if you want to break up, or one of you dies, or, you become disabled and you can no longer work in the business. These are real things that I deal with and have dealt with on a regular basis. And when partners want to break up because they want to go their separate ways, even with small businesses, they're arguing over everything. The smallest of things, because first of all, it's an emotional time, and second of all, they want to take as much as they can to go on with their business, right? And nowadays, it's not just the computers and the office supplies and things like that. We have all kinds of digital assets. We have pictures of the work we did. If you're a designer, or you're a baker, or you're a You create some sort of intellectual capital, and you want to take the pictures with you, or recipes or things like that, and it becomes a really, really difficult thing to deal with. And if you don't have as much leverage over your partner, they got more leverage for whatever reason, they got more money than you do, or they got more backing, I don't know, whatever it is, you're going to be at the short end of the stick. Same thing with dealing with vendors, dealing with customers. You must, if you're dealing with vendors, obviously, you normally deal with contracts, right? You have written agreements that say, hey, if you send it to me and it's wrong, I get to return it, all kinds of stuff. If we have an argument, we go to arbitration maybe, whatever. With customers, I find that especially small business owners, a lot of them have difficulty with dealing with customers in a written agreement. They feel that they are somehow whipping this thing out, and which is certainly not a way you should be looking at it to begin with, and it's an uncomfortable situation. So if you are doing this not as a hobby, right, but you're doing it for a living, it's your business, you're a professional, you're a consultant, you're another kind of professional, or whatever you're doing, for you to not do it with, like, professionals do things in writing. They have contracts. There's industries that require that, right? We know real estate requires it. As a lawyer, I have to have a retainer letter, an engagement letter signed by the client. It's an ethical responsibility of mine. That's true for other professionals. And that is the way professionals do business. So if you're going to be serious about it, you can't go to the judge and say, well, Your Honor, they owe me money and this is the terms, but I was really uncomfortable to ask them to sign an agreement, so I didn't have them do it. Well, the judge is going to say, well, I'm sorry about that, but you, he's going to hold it against you, and because you really need to do things like a professional. I think people respect that ultimately, and they respect you being and expect you to be a professional. Like, it doesn't surprise people that I need a signed retainer agreement. Because they expect that from a lawyer. So you need to create a system or a methodology, however you want to look at it, where you're comfortable with presenting your contract, okay? Maybe it's you have your first meeting consultation and you then say, listen, let me put a memo together just summarizing our meeting. Part of that will include my engagement letter for you to review. I will send it to you on e-sign, because that's how I do my retainer agreements nowadays, and you'll be able to review it, and if you like it, you click on it, you sign it, you pay the retainer payment, because as an attorney, I take retainer payments, not everyone does, and you may do that through a credit card link, secure link, or they mail you a check, or something like that, right? So you create a methodology where they're, okay, what do we do next? Well, what we do next is this, and it's a good part of the closing process, a good part of the sales process anyway. So that is the number one thing that people do wrong. They don't put things in writing. They do things on a handshake. They never really, or they put together an operating agreement with their partner. They pulled off the internet, and if people do their own agreements, what happens is they put all the good stuff in there. Like, if things are great, we're going to do this. They never have the other side of the agreement, which, although it's half of the agreement, it's probably more than half of the issues. Is what happens if things don't work out, if we get into a dispute, if we have an argument, how do we resolve it? So that's always missing. Even with guys I know that are in business, have law degrees, and they don't practice, but they do their own agreements. Look, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've written hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of agreements. You're doing it for the first or second time. You're just not going to put the things in that I, as a professional, know what to do. So you may not be in my jurisdiction, can work with me. Go to a good business attorney in your area, form a relationship with them, and have them put this stuff together for you, because you can use them going forward. Everything's pinned up, just like having wills. And as a business owner, you got to coordinate those two together as well. You want to know that your partner's got a will and you have a will, and everything's set up so if something happens, the business doesn't go in a tailspin when you're dealing with spouses and family and stuff like that. Also, business plan. I'm a huge advocate of writing a business plan. And a former mentor of mine, he was the first guest on the podcast. He was also the 100th guest. Jack Killian, if you're going to listen to the podcast, if you've never listened before, go back to the beginning. Listen to the first 2 episodes. There are 2 parts with Jack. Jack unfortunately passed away last spring. He was a mentor of mine. He was a good friend, and we miss him a lot. But he was a big advocate of writing business plans and would teach people how to do that on top of all the networking that he taught people to do and whatever, the king of that. He has a good book actually called Network All the Time, and I believe his wife is finishing up the manuscript that he was writing just before he passed. And that book will be out hopefully in the spring or maybe the fall after the summer. So writing a business plan, you can take a course, you can look at all kinds of things online. There are one-page business plans, small kinds of business, shorter business plans. SCORE has one that's probably like 11 or 12 parts. I have a template. If you reach out to me through MitchBeinecker.com or Beinecker Law, you can pick up a template. I have boiled it down to basically 4 parts, which I'll probably cover in a blog article or something like that. But there are, ways to do it where it doesn't have to be charts and graphs and all kinds of, colors and numbers and things like that. You just do the basics and get started. Your business plan is not something that you write and never go back to. It should be a working document that grows with your business. Each part may separate out. Maybe the personnel part, the people part becomes a handbook and a guide for, hiring, firing, and dealing with people in the organization. Your marketing section and market analysis may become your marketing guide, and so on and so forth. So business planning and business and putting things in writing, strategic planning, all that stuff becomes so important. And the ones that are successful, the business owners that I work with that have been and are continue to be successful, they do all that. They do it on a regular basis. And it helps them know, one of the most important parts of your business plan is your financials. Well, these people know their numbers. And that takes me into the next thing. So the second reason why people tend to be more successful than others is just what I said. They know their numbers. They know exactly when they need to add a new employee for one particular thing. I had a guest on my podcast, Cloudy, I think her name is. She has a commercial cleaning company. You can find her. There's a guest episode with her. She knew and knows exactly how much business she needs to grow and how many new customers she needs to bring on. I said it was commercial cleaning before she adds a new crew. I mean, she knew her numbers so well that it was standard business for her. It wasn't like guessing. Okay, well maybe we should add some new people. We're going to bring it. No, she had it down. And the ones that I know that are top of their numbers and know their costs, really their costs, not just cost of goods sold, but their actual cost of operation, and therefore their pricing, and figure out if their prices should go up or down. Obviously, some of those are market sensitive, but if the market is at X and you are at X plus in terms of cost and you can't charge more than that, well, you got one of two choices. Either you got to figure a way to operate less expensively, or maybe your service is more upgraded than the other services and you can justify the higher price, and it allows you to differentiate yourself in the marketplace and niche down and just service a very specific part of the market. So that is the second reason. And financials and numbers are so important because they really reveal a lot of the problems that may be going on with your business and some of the roadblocks that are up down the way that you don't see. Cash flow has a way of hiding a lot of things. And during the pandemic, a lot of people woke up to the fact that their business was simply a business of cash coming in and going out, and they were paying bills and they were behind, and then they would take care of their families and they'd pay their own mortgages and pay their bills. And if everything just stopped and the cash stopped coming in and the bills kept going, things would come crashing down. And that's what happened during the pandemic for a lot of people, especially in the food service business and other businesses like that. And some of them were very creative and resilient and knew exactly what they needed to do to cut back and to deal with, and they needed this and that. Some of the people that I know struggled, and they weren't able to. Somebody told me that I'm echoing. See if I can fix that. And they weren't able to bounce back. The word resiliency, I think, has become a big word coming out of the pandemic. How do you deal with this next time? Some people just, completely switched their business online. They adjusted, let's say, their restaurant to deliveries, to pickup, screening, so people could pick it up with a mask and get this and that. And I had a friend who has actually, he was a guest on the podcast too. My friend Mario, who's got several businesses. One of them is a martial arts studio, and he went right online. So because kids weren't coming in, so how do you do that? And gyms did that too, personal training gyms and stuff, some of the ones that were very resilient. So it's important that if you know what your numbers are and you know what your costs are, that you can make those shifts. And also, if things aren't working, like, you can't keep doing the same thing thinking that it's going to always work, because if it doesn't, you might have to make adjustments. So if you knew those were coming, and you can grow. Also, and my good friend Jack Killian was a big advocate of this too, when you know your numbers, you can figure out what other ways you can grow your business, what other streams of income can you create to grow your revenue, right? So if one stream of income does dry up or becomes problematic, you have other streams of income that maybe, maybe you have an e-commerce business because, the brick and mortar stores are struggling and not doing well because of something in the economy or a pandemic or whatever's going on. So those are things that you need to pay attention to, but you can't do it without strategic planning, without knowing your numbers. The third thing is knowing your market and your customers. And not all these are in the book, by the way. Some of them are just business related. They're not legal. I don't think this one's in the book. But knowing your market and your customers is so important. And it sounds like, right, just, okay, you got to know your market. But so many business owners, just like their numbers, don't really know what their customer wants, why the customer is doing business with them. They believe that they know. They're sure they know. But if you don't ask, and you don't constantly test, and you don't get feedback, and you don't ask for client reviews and client suggestions, you will be wrong. As a lawyer, I don't say things very definitively, but my experience is I've interviewed more than 250 people on the podcast, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of businesses. Nobody is correct about why their customers do business. They may be partially correct, but at the end of the day, there's always different reasons why people do business with you, and you need to know. I had a guest on the podcast. Her name's Ivona. She runs a corporate gifting program. So she works with corporations. She just doesn't, you can't just order like pens with logos from her or mugs or something. She runs corporate gifting programs. We're going to get a little bit into keeping in touch with your customers in a minute. But she looks for customers, and she's very niche oriented, which is very good. It's good to niche down from a marketing standpoint. People think that narrowing their marketplace actually reduces the amount of business they get, but it's totally the opposite. So if you talk to anybody about niching down in your industry, it's a very good way to go. Become an expert in one niche, one type of client, so forth. She wants to work with corporations that have the resources and the interest in keeping in touch and regularly sending gifts to their customers. So she would build a special program for each of her customers. And she did this when she started her business, because her business was going through some iterations she couldn't figure out. She started interviewing and talking to every customer and every person she could find, and continues to this day to ask why their experience was good or bad. What should she do differently? Why did they do business with her? What are the needs of their customers? And constantly asking that. And I think first, the customer appreciates that. And also, she's always able to adjust things. She's never caught off guard as to, why her customer does business and you find out you're wrong. She won't let that happen. So you should know your customer. And when you're getting started in business, I find that business owners, entrepreneurs, startups, they don't ask enough people. They talk to 5 of their best friends who probably aren't telling them the truth, not because they want to hurt them, but because they look at things good like their friends. So they're supportive, right? We're all supportive of each other, and it's just nature of things. You want to find some people that'll be brutally honest with you. You want to find a lot of people. If you ask 5 or 10 people, might not be enough. You got to ask 20, 30, 40, maybe 100 people before you get enough consistency with the feedback that you get about the business that you're trying to create. And just because you think it's a great idea, I say this all the time, does not mean that it should be a business. Or maybe you're not the one to execute it. Maybe you need some other people. Maybe you need some other personnel. Okay? I have several clients who are entering the cannabis space now, and they have and one in particular is a good friend of mine and a very good client of mine, and she is a student of the business and is jumping through hoops to get her business going and is really, really knocking the cover off the ball. But she recognizes that she's never done this before. So she went out and brought in professionals on a fractional basis, like an operations person and a consultant to help with the licensing and so forth. And I'm helping with some of it on the general business side. And because she's not going to leave it to chance to say, oh, maybe I can pull this off. No, she wants to be successful, tremendously successful. So she's bringing in the people who have the success and experience so she can learn as we move forward with the company. So it's very important that you realize what your shortcomings are and what skills you bring and what you don't bring. And it doesn't mean that you can't do the business. You just might have to find the person. But maybe it sometimes means you shouldn't do the business. It's going to be too much. Or maybe you have a great business idea and you can't make money doing it. So then it's just a hobby. So enough said about that. I got two more, and this is actually going longer than I expected, which is nice. We're up to 35 minutes already. The fourth one I actually touched on, didn't realize, but creating multiple streams of income for your business, right? A business cannot survive alone on one product, on one service. The reason being is that things change, right? The one constant we know that is true is that things are not constant, right? Bit of an oxymoron. But things will always change, and the people that recognize that they have to deal with change and they have to be adjusting to that. I think the word is morphogenic versus morphostatic. Morphostatic people are on the train tracks, right? And they do everything they can to stay on the train tracks, even though there's a bridge up ahead and the bridge has collapsed and they're going to stay on the track. Morphogenic people will adjust, jump the track, go in a different direction, take a fork, and are testing and constantly looking for that. But the people that, if you can build your business up with multiple streams of income, you protect yourself a lot. I'm a big fan of subscription-based services, of recurring income services. So, for example, maybe you're a consultant and you do a lot of consulting in certain industries, and you're looking to branch out into other industries. But as you grow, you may want to have some clients on retainer, so you have regular income, and some clients where you do project work, stuff like that. And then maybe because you're an expert, you start speaking and you get fees for speaking. Maybe you write and publish articles and you get fees for that. Or you create a newsletter and people subscribe to the newsletter. I mean, there's different ways that you can build up. Some of them you can do for free, or some of them you'll be able to charge for. My business, for example, is a traditional legal practice, but I also do have a retainer program. It's on the website. I call it shared general counsel, right? Because most small business owners can't afford to have their own attorney on staff. Even for larger businesses, it might not make sense. They don't need a lawyer sitting there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I have different packages for small business owners to have me on retainer, to work with them, and then I have recurring income. And what it does for the client actually is more so than it does for me. So I have recurring income, but it allows me to know your business. So if you get a letter in the mail or something happens, I already know what your operating documents are and that they're in place and they're correct. I know that your wills and trusts are cleaned up and everything's in place because I did them. And I know what your business is, so you don't have to go, you get a demand letter from somebody threatening you with something, you go to a lawyer. Lawyer's got to spend 15 or 20 hours just getting to know your business, reading things, checking on your documents. They see things aren't in place, you're not protected, you don't have the right insurance. I do all that for my clients. And I do it based on different packages, which give you, a certain amount of hours and email consulting, and then different levels of discounts on top of additional services for that. So it works well for me and it works well for them. So subscription-based businesses, definitely something you should consider if you can in your particular industry or area of expertise. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, and it is it's a great idea. And it is I was on a podcast yesterday as a guest, The Millionaire's Lawyer. I guess it'll be published soon. And he asked me, what's the number one, marketing and business development, non-legal thing that people should do to be successful? And the answer was they need to keep in touch with their clients. But more specifically, the key is to build, and I was mentioning it before when I was talking about AWeber, our sponsor, to build an email or a marketing list, right? A mailing list. In the old days, it was postcards and newsletters and stuff like that. It was a lot more labor intensive. Now, with the advent of email and the internet and all these automated services, you can very easily build an email distribution list and keep track of or keep in touch with your customers, not just your customers, anybody who knows your centers of influence, marketing partners, networking partners, anybody who knows you want to get them on your list. right? And we have several thousand on our list, along with, contacts through LinkedIn or whatever. But if you have, and this is based on a book, my favorite book for business in the world is called The Referral of a Lifetime. It's written by Tim Templeton. It's a Ken Blanchard series books, if you know Gung Ho, some of those other books. And it's a parable. It's a story, I think, about a woman who is struggling in her business, and she goes to a coffee shop and she meets somebody there, and she goes through this series of meetings with different people and learning about how they keep in touch with their clients and what they do. And it 15, 20 years ago when I read the book, you were sending postcards and doing all those types of things. Now it's been adjusted for email. But it talks about the importance of keeping in touch with your clients, about recognizing your clients, about making them a champion of your cause, about showing you that you appreciate them, and keeping yourself top of mind. There's even a methodology in the book, and I think there's a sample letter in the book, for you to go back to all of your customers. So somebody said to me recently, well, geez, I haven't really kept in touch with my customers. What do I do? It's like embarrassing. Well, you go and you send them a letter, and you say, and you're honest about it. You say, you know what? We've evaluated some things. We've looked through our books, and we have not done a good job of keeping in touch with our customers. And we're promising from today on that we're going to always keep in touch and provide you with valuable information and stay connected on a going forward basis. So if it's a card, a birthday card, a holiday card, or email, a newsletter, an article, a podcast, whatever it is, you promise to keep in touch. And it's a commitment, okay? But the book points out, and this is simple math, that they say that everyone knows about 250 people, right? Everyone can pretty much make a list of 200 to 250 people that know you and you know them. Maybe don't do business with all of them, but you know them, right? If that's true, then just at the first level, if you take your 250 and each of those 250 know 250, you multiply 250 by 250, it comes to something like 62,000 plus people, right? So just at level one, just by keeping in touch, and I told you we have thousands on our list. It's taken years to build it up to that. But just by keeping in touch with 250 people, and you may have more customers than that, I don't know, you are reaching more than 50,000 people, potentially, every time you send out an email blast. And I get business in the most roundabout ways because somebody got a notice about my podcast, listened to a guest about a topic that they were thinking about. Somebody else mentioned it to this person. That person talked to somebody else about something who mentioned it to their friend who had this problem. And they said, well, the lawyer is in Clark, New Jersey, and you ought to look him up, and they find me. Or they looked up the podcast, and they figured out that I'm a lawyer, and they connected with me. And it happens all the time. But it's not magic, and it doesn't happen overnight. So you got to start it. You got to stay in touch with people. It used to be that, people need to hear from you 5, 6, 7 times before they recognize you. I think it's up to like 15 or 16 now before they realize like that you're actually in existence. So as they get things from you regularly, maybe once a week, once a month, probably more than once a week is too much, but it depends on your industry. They will start to recognize that you exist. I run into people all the time. Oh, I listen to your podcast. I see your blog articles. Whatever it is. I saw you speak and guest and whatever. But that took a while. It took 10 to 12 months before the podcast even was recognized on a regular basis. So a lot of that stuff is just you keep putting out content, you keep staying in touch, and that's the magic. The magic is consistency, and you don't do it haphazardly. You make sure that you put something out every week, whether it's a blog, a guest appearance on a podcast, some marketing piece that you need to do, post it to social media, and also keep in touch. So the keep in touch thing nowadays should be the email list, right? You blast out, plus whatever you're blasting out should also go on your social media channels. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever, TikTok, YouTube, whatever you want to use these days, whatever fits with the industry that you're in and how you operate, whatever the services you provide. Maybe LinkedIn makes more sense versus Facebook. I think we put it out to all of the platforms, but I wouldn't second guess a lot of that stuff. So in addition to that, right, so a lot of people want to do, their own virtual marketing. They put things on the internet all the time. They're waiting for business, right? And they're like, I don't get any results. I put things on LinkedIn. I don't hear from anybody. Well, first of all, don't do it once. Like I said, you got to be consistent about it for a long period of time. Don't expect a lot in the first few months. But at the same token, you shouldn't be networking and not keeping in touch with people And you shouldn't be keeping in touch with people and not networking, right? They support each other. The marketing and the networking support each other. And I mentioned to you before that I go to events and I meet people. Well, when I meet people at events, now even back in person, and I come back with a stack of business cards, those business cards get put into a filter in my email system. I send a thank you. Hey, it was nice meeting you. Bob, I hope we can do a one-to-one chat, maybe grab coffee at some time. In the meantime, I've taken the liberty of adding you to our email distribution list, which you can opt out of any time. I hope that's okay, because I would like to stay in touch. And then my email system, and this is one of the nice features of Aweber, it has a automatic drip campaign of about 5 or 6 emails over about 4 or 5 week period of time that sends them emails to introduce them to the law firm, to the services I provide, to the podcast, to the advisory services, to the books, all that type of stuff, so they can get to know me a little bit better. So when we get together, we can talk a little, I've been getting your emails. And then they go on the regular list from there, here over the podcast and the blogs and, things like that, and the live shows and stuff like that. Some of that takes work. You got to build those systems in. You got to create the emails and the whole thing. But my system now takes, when the email is added, and by the way, there's also integration. So when I do online meetings, I get introduced to somebody. I have to have an initial consult. I send them a link to my online calendar. I use Calendly. There's several companies out there, but I like Calendly, but they're not a sponsor, so go wherever you want. And they book the appointment it'll be through Zoom. The system then takes their email, adds it to my mailing list, says, welcome to the law firm and the services, and they get to know about me a little bit before and or after we talk. So it's automatic. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. I'm very into automated systems like that. I also, on my CRM, that I track cases, when cases are closed, when matters are concluded. I take them from the pipeline and I move it to a reviews pipeline, which sends the email to Aweber, and Aweber says, oh, wait, we got this email. We have to send out a letter to people thanking them for their time and asking them to review us on Google, on Avo, or whatever, and giving them some tips and pointers and things not to say from an ethics standpoint and stuff like that. Got that from a very good friend of mine, Nicole, down in Florida. So that's something you should do too. Build automation into your business. Also, it sounds a little funny, but categorize your clients. Maybe A, B's, or C's, or by industry or whatever. So, the A's are like the champions of your cause. They understand what you do. They refer you business. They're available if, you want to use them as a referral source or a reference, recommendation, things like that. B's are ones that working with them, they can become A's. C's, maybe, you keep them on your list, but you don't expect a lot. They're not going to become A's or B's. D's, I would not put on your list. So that's a good way to do it. You also maybe want to tag things by industry, because maybe you want to send out a marketing email to a certain group of people, maybe just doctors as opposed to, engineers or lawyers or something like that, or financial services people. I work with a lot of them, so they might get specific things directly versus other messages. So those are things to think about. You can do that with all these email marketing systems, especially Aweber. It's a very great way to do it. One of the things, though, that's important is when it comes to automation, the reason that you automate things is because consistency, as I mentioned before, is, the rule, right? That you ever hear about the 80-20 rule, right? That 20% of your business comes from 80% of your business comes from 20% of your clients, which is true. You just don't know what the 20% is. So you got to keep in touch with them, which is why this is important. Well, I always say that you should spend 80% of your time marketing and networking, and if you automate it, it becomes a lot easier. And then 20% of your time doing work, like squeeze the work in. And lawyers especially fall into the trap of they get very busy and they're doing their work and they're not going to events and they're stop marketing because it's not automated. And then the business kind of dries up and they're like, oh my God, it's a roller coaster. And it's up and down, and it's a hard way to live and to operate your practice, because it's stressful for anybody when their business is up and down. So if you want to be consistent, you want to know that there's things working in the background and going on while you're doing your work at the same time. So look into automation, integrations between your email system, your calendar, Zoom, your phone, your CRM. There's all kinds of great products out there. You just got to do the research and find what fits your particular, not necessarily industry. I mean, there's ones that are specifically, there's a lot of systems that are managed law firms that I constantly get emails about. I can name 5 or 10 of them. I don't use them because I'm just a sole practitioner now. I have a virtual practice for the most part. I don't need those systems. I've built my own systems, but some people do. They need calendar management. They're going to court. They this and that, the billing and everything like that. So, all that kind of stuff's very important. Bookkeeping, all kinds of automations that are out there that you'd be surprised how easy they are to use nowadays. Okay, so we now hit 50 minutes instead of like 20, which I thought we were doing. I want to remind you, it's the third Thursday of every month. You'll get, if you're on our email list. If you're not, go and sign up. If you're on our email list, you'll get reminders. But the third Thursday of every month at 10:30 Eastern, we're going to have our first guest in March. I don't think I remember who it is. Let's see if they've on here. It is a gentleman named Chris Miles will be on the show. And you'll hear from him and his story, just like you always hear from all of the other guests. If you would like to be on the show, please go visit MitchBeinhacker.com. You can put it in there. Tell us, why you want to be on the show, what you think you have to bring to the show, what you think would be valuable to you to be on the show. And we'll consider you. We do have a bit of a long waiting list, but, I'm always setting up pre-chat talks with people to discuss coming on the show. So we can set those up as well. If you have a guest to recommend, I appreciate it recommending them to us. And watch for the book coming out. So be sure to get on our mailing list to know when the book's released and you can get it. So, again, I'm Mitch Beinhacker. I'm the host. Let's roll the closing credits, and we will see you on the next live show. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For more information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com. The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.